My girlfriend said I wasn't a priority before leaving for a trip with her guy friends, so I vanished. When she came back begging, I discovered she was already planning her next getaway. Hey everyone. Before we kick off today's video, I've got a favor to ask. We've noticed our channel isn't getting as much love lately, and subscribing is one of the easiest ways you can help us out. It's quick, free, and it means we can keep bringing you awesome content. Your support really means a lot, so let's work together to keep this channel growing. Thanks a bunch. Now, let's dive into the video. Alright, so here's the scoop. This all went down about 3 weeks back, and I'm still getting bombarded with messages from my ex and her friends, telling me I need to patch things up with her. But honestly, I feel like I dealt with it perfectly and can't figure out why everyone's painting me as the villain. A bit of backstory: Sarah and I had been dating for over 2 years. We're both 26, living about 40 minutes apart, which isn't ideal, but we made it work. She has this tight-knit college crew, and I've always been cool with it because, duh, everyone needs their squad, right? But looking back, there were definitely red flags that I ignored. Her crew consists of 6 folks, 3 girls and 3 guys, who bonded back in their freshman year. Now, Marcus, one of the guys, always gave me weird vibes. He's that guy who thinks he's way funnier than he is, treading the line of inappropriateness without really crossing it. He'd make comments about how great Sarah looked in an outfit or how lucky I was in a slightly backhanded way. Tyler and Josh, the other dudes, are pretty regular. Tyler's in a stable thing with Emma, and Josh is single but drama-free. Marcus, on the other hand, has been single for some time and has gotten kind of iffy with boundaries, especially with the girls. The real trouble kicked off about 6 months ago. The group planned a big Florida getaway for spring break. Sarah initially asked if I wanted to tag along, and I was down because why not? More bonding time, right? But then she came back saying it might be better if it were just them since all the plans and reservations were already set. I was a bit miffed but figured, okay, group plans can be like that. So, while they plotted their escapade, Sarah became super consumed with trip details. From sunrise to bedtime, her phone was buzzing nonstop with group chat messages about the trip. When we'd hang out for dinner or a movie, she was glued to her phone. I felt like I was competing with this trip for her attention, and that was a major bummer. Then came the t-shirts and tattoos. Marcus thought it'd be cool for them to get matching shirts with a college inside joke, and even temporary tattoos with the same design for photos. I thought it was a little juvenile, but whatever floats their boat. The week before the trip, Sarah was practically living at my place under the pretense of packing. But she was way more into her phone, drowning in group chat chatter about the most mundane details, like beach cooler logistics. I felt like a ghost in my space. The night before they were set to leave, Marcus made some flirty comments about Sarah's dress during a group call. She giggled, and honestly, it rubbed me the wrong way. By morning, Sarah was up at the crack of dawn, primping for the trip with her phone propped up, catching every ounce of the girls' excitement through video calls. Marcus joined in with his usual flirty banter. I tried to shrug it off, making breakfast for her, hoping for a nice send-off, but she was too wrapped up in trip prep to notice. And that's when everything took a turn. So, a few minutes go by, and then like 20 minutes later, she's still in the bathroom. Meanwhile, everyone's chatting about hitting up some bar on their first night, and Marcus is all pumped to play wingman for Sarah if any dudes try to hit on her. Sarah's like, I can handle myself, but thanks for having my back. They all crack up about it. That's when I'm thinking this is getting kind of crazy. So, I knock on the bathroom door and remind her that her breakfast is getting cold and ask if she can wrap it up so we can chill for a bit before she jets off. She peeks out and says she's almost done, but coordinating outfits for photos is crucial. I tell her I made her fave breakfast, hoping we could just hang out and chat a little since she's gonna be away for a week. She gives me this look as if I'm being unreasonable and says, "Babe, I'm trying to get ready. Can we talk when I get back?" So, I head back to the kitchen, staring at the breakfast I made getting cold on the counter. I'm thinking about how we haven't really had a proper chat in weeks cause she's been all about planning this trip, while she's in the bathroom still yapping with Marcus and the gang. I realize I feel like a stranger in my own relationship. That's when I decide we need to talk about priorities and communication. Not to argue, but just to let her know I've been feeling disconnected and we need to put more effort into our relationship. So, when she finally comes out, looking stunning, I tell her she looks amazing and ask if we can sit down and have breakfast together and talk a bit. She checks her phone right away, saying her group is about to head out and she needs to finish packing. I tell her I get she's excited about the trip, but I feel like we haven't truly connected in weeks, and I'd like to talk about that. She's bustling around the apartment, stuffing things into her suitcase, and says, "What do you mean we haven't connected? We've been hanging out every day." So, I explain that even though we've been in the same space, she's always on her phone with the group chat, and her attention's been on this trip rather than us. I clarify I'm not trying to kill her buzz or guilt trip her for being pumped about the trip. I just want to know our relationship still matters to her. Then she stops packing and looks at me like I'm being unreasonable. She says, "Of course, our relationship is a priority, but this trip is happening right now and I need to focus on getting ready. We can talk relationship stuff when I get back." I tell her that's exactly my point. She's treating our relationship like something she can put on pause whenever something else pops up. She gets defensive and says, "That's not what I'm doing. You're being dramatic." So, I ask her straight up, "What's your biggest priority right now?" Without skipping a beat, she says, "Getting ready for this trip and making sure I don't forget anything important." I then ask where our relationship falls on her priority list right now. She hesitates before saying, "Our relationship is important, but it's not going anywhere. This trip is only happening once." That's when it hit me hard. She basically told me our relationship wasn't her priority. It was like, she'd always choose anything more exciting over us. I stood there, processing it all. This wasn't about one chat or one trip. It was about how she saw our whole relationship. I was just the safe fallback that'd be there while she focused on exciting things. So, I told her, "Okay, if that's how you see it, I get it." She didn't even notice I was upset. She just said, "Good. I'm glad you understand," and went back to packing. I wandered over to the kitchen, sat down with the breakfast I'd made, which was now completely cold. I started mulling over everything that had led up to this moment. Months of feeling like I was competing with her friends for attention, weeks of watching her put planning this trip over spending quality time with me, and now her flat out saying our relationship wasn't her main thing. I realized I was over it. Not over the relationship necessarily, but over being treated like I was optional. Done with always being the backup guy when she had time left over. So, right there at the kitchen table, I made a decision. If I wasn't her priority, then I wouldn't act like she was mine either. If our relationship could be sidelined whenever something more exciting came along, then I could do the same. I got up, started packing a bag, and decided I'd head out to visit my brother in Denver for a few days. Sarah was in the living room, still packing and chatting on the phone with her friends about their meetup. I came out with my bag, and she looked confused, asking where I was heading. I told her I was going to see my brother in Denver for a bit. She asked why now, and I said it seemed like a good time since she's busy with her priorities. She wondered if I was upset, and I told her no, I totally got her priorities, and I was just making my own decisions from that. She looked at me, trying to figure out if I was being sarcastic, but I kept my tone neutral. Then her phone rang again. It was Marcus saying they were meeting at Tyler's in 30 minutes to load up the cars. She answered and said she'd be there soon, hung up, and said she had to go. I told her to have a great trip and hoped she got everything she was prioritizing. She gave me a quick kiss, said she'd call when they got to Florida, grabbed her bags, and left. As soon as she drove off, I called my brother Jake in Denver. We hadn't talked in a couple of months, but we're close, and I knew he wouldn't mind if I crashed at his place for a few days to clear my head. Jake picked up, and I told him I needed to get out of town and asked if I could stay with him. He sensed something was up because I don't usually just leave town on a whim. But he didn't press for details. He just said, "Of course," and told me to drive safe. I tossed my bag in the car and hit the road to Denver. It's about a 6-hour drive from where I am, giving me plenty of time to think things over. So, I started thinking about everything, and it hit me that when Sarah said I wasn't her priority, it wasn't just her speaking in the heat of the moment. She was just being real about how she felt. And then I started remembering all these times over the last few months when I felt like I was always coming second to other things in her life. I got to Jake's around 4 p.m., and the moment he saw me, he could tell something was up. He didn't press me to talk, he just handed me a beer and said I could spill whenever I was ready. That night, we ordered pizza and watched basketball, and I told him everything. Jake just listened, no interruptions. When I finished, he asked, "So, what's your plan?" I honestly didn't know. I just needed some space to process how I was feeling about everything. Meanwhile, Sarah was off on her trip, and they just reached Florida, living it up at the beach, according to the pics on social media. They looked like they were having a blast, and honestly, good for them. That first night, she texted me at about 11 p.m. her time to say they'd arrived safely and that the hotel was really nice. I replied that I was glad they made it okay. She asked about my day, and I mentioned I was chilling in Denver with Jake. She seemed surprised I hadn't mentioned my trip, and I told her it was a last-minute thing. No response after that, so she was probably out at the bars with her crew. The next morning, she messaged me with a bunch of photos from their day, beach pics, restaurant shots, the usual. I checked them out and just replied, "Looks fun." And that continued the next few days. She'd send updates, and I'd respond politely but kept it short. It seemed like she noticed I wasn't as engaged since her texts started getting longer and more detailed, like she was fishing for more of a response. Meanwhile, I was loving my time in Denver with Jake. We went hiking, hit up some breweries, and caught up on life. It was just what I needed, and I realized I felt happier and more relaxed than I had in months. We talked about the whole Sarah situation a few more times, and Jake gave me some great perspective. He said it sounded like Sarah was taking me for granted and that maybe some space would help her realize what was up. Plus, he said if someone tells you you're not their priority, you should believe them and act accordingly. On the 4th day of her trip, Sarah called instead of texting. I was out hiking with Jake and didn't pick up, but she left a voicemail saying she missed me and was concerned because I seemed different in my texts. She wanted to have a real conversation and asked me to call her. I didn't call back that day, I just wasn't ready for a heavy talk. That night she called again, and I answered. She immediately wanted to know if I was mad, and I said I wasn't, just giving her space. She went quiet and then asked what I meant. I reminded her about what she said before leaving, and that I was just adjusting my expectations accordingly. She tried to say I took it the wrong way, but then I heard someone in the background, and she said she had to go, but we'd talk later. The call was super short, about 5 minutes. The next day, I decided to extend my stay in Denver. I was supposed to drive back, but I was having a blast and realized I didn't need to rush home. Sarah's trip was still going, and I was enjoying figuring out what I wanted from a relationship. So, I called my boss to see if I could work remotely for a bit longer, and he was cool with it. That's when Sarah noticed something was really up. She texted, asking when I was heading home, and I told her I decided to stay longer since I was having such a great time. She called right away, asking what was going on and why I extended my trip without talking to her about it. I told her I was simply doing what she did, focusing on my priorities without consulting her first. She wasn't happy about that and kept saying it was different because her trip was planned ages ago, while mine was spontaneous. So, I asked her what difference it made, and she couldn't come up with a solid answer. She just kept saying I was being weird and distant. I told her I wasn't being weird, just honest about where I stood and adjusting my behavior. Things got a bit heated because she insisted I misunderstood her comment on priorities. She tried to say she just meant at that particular moment, she needed to focus on the trip, but I pointed out she'd been putting the trip first for months. She got defensive, saying she was allowed to be excited about it. I agreed but said she couldn't expect me to wait around until she had time for me. That's when she said something that really confirmed what I'd been thinking. She said, "I don't get why it's a big deal. You know I love you, and our relationship is solid, so why can't you just support me having fun with my friends?" It dawned on me she didn't see the problem. To her, love and a solid relationship meant it could go on the back burner. I told her love alone wasn't enough without actions and choices to back it up. Saying I wasn't a priority but expecting me to be okay with that because she loved me wasn't how healthy relationships worked. She got quiet and said she needed time to think. I told her to take all the time she needed, and I was going to keep enjoying Denver. The rest of her trip was weird. She kept texting sporadically, but the tone changed, like she was testing the waters. She'd send photos, and I'd reply politely, but I wasn't engaging like before. No follow-up questions or anything. So, there I was, scrolling through social media, casually looking at Sarah's updates like I would anyone else's I'm not super close with. Meanwhile, I was having a blast in Denver with Jake. We hit up a Rockies game, checked out some cool museums, and dined at this amazing restaurant in the mountains. I was throwing up some pics on social media, and I noticed Sarah was all over them right after I posted. On the last day of her trip, she called and said our earlier conversation had been on her mind, and she wanted to chat once she got home. I was like, sure thing, but I wasn't planning on being home when she got back because I was still living it up in Denver. She asked when I'd be back, and I honestly told her I didn't know, maybe a few more days. She sounded a bit freaked out and asked if I was planning to break up with her. I told her I wasn't planning anything major, I was just focusing on my own priorities and living day by day. She went quiet when I emphasized priorities. She admitted to understanding she'd hurt my feelings and wanted to make it right. I explained it wasn't just about feelings, it was about how we viewed relationships. For her, it seemed like something that could take a backseat, while I believed they needed constant attention. That seemed to be a new perspective for her. She asked if we could talk more when she got back, and I told her we could, but I'd still do my thing until I was ready. Sarah returned home on Sunday. I saw she made it back through her social media posts, and later, she texted to ask when we could talk. I was still in Denver, so I told her I'd let her know when I was back. The next morning, she kept calling me. I picked up one call, and she was crying, saying she realized she'd been taking me for granted and wanted to fix things. I appreciated her introspection but said I needed time to think too. She asked how long, and I said as long as it takes. That's when she really panicked. She didn't get why I was stringing this out and not just coming home to patch things up. I told her I was doing what she'd done to me, which she didn't quite grasp. I stayed in Denver a couple more days, and during that time, Sarah bombarded me with messages apologizing and saying she'd been wrong to prioritize the trip over us. She kept calling, asking when I'd be home. But then I noticed on social media that she was still out with Marcus, Tyler, and Joshua, acting like she was still on vacation, even back home. It was kinda hypocritical if you ask me, saying she missed me but still hanging with the same group she prioritized over me. When I finally left Denver and returned home, I didn't tell Sarah. I just slipped back into my regular routine. She texted me later, asking if I could talk, and I told her I was home. She was over in no time, looking pretty worn out. She apologized profusely and said she got it now, she'd been wrong. She said she wanted to change and prioritize us more. I told her I appreciated the apologies, but needed to see actions, not just hear words. I told her I'd realized during my time away that I deserved to be a priority, thanks to how present Jake was during our time together. She said she wanted to be that person for me, but I told her actions would speak louder than words from now on. 3 weeks later, not much had changed. Sarah was trying hard to spend more time with me, but it seemed forced, like she was just scared of losing me rather than truly changing. She was still hanging with her crew, all wrapped up in planning another outing, just like before. When I pointed it out, she brushed it off as just one concert. But I could see the same pattern emerging. So, I suggested we take a break, not a full breakup, but just stop pretending things were fine when they weren't. She was upset, saying she'd been trying and it wasn't fair. I reassured her I wasn't giving up, just acknowledging our differences. Relationships, in her eyes, could wait for her attention, while I thought they needed constant care to thrive. She insisted she could change, that she understood now. But right in the middle of this, Marcus texted her, and she immediately checked her phone. I pointed this out and, once again, it highlighted our different priorities. So, it hit me that it all really didn't matter. I realized that nothing was going to change. She might be clued in on the issue now, but her habits and natural vibes were the same. She was still going to chase whatever seemed most pressing or exciting at the time and just assume our relationship would be there, on standby, whenever she was ready to focus. So, I told her we should officially call it quits. She started crying and begging me to think twice, promising she'd do anything to make it work. But I told her the real problem wasn't about doing anything. It was about her not understanding what needed to be done. Since then, she's been flooding my phone with texts and calls, showing up at my place. She even got her friends in on it, and they're messaging me, saying I'm being too harsh and that she really does love me and just made some blunders. But here's the kicker. Even now, while she's supposedly fighting for us, she's still putting her group chat with Marcus and crew first. I can see on social media they're planning another trip next month, and she's all in on the plans. So, she's saying our relationship is top priority but is still planning trips with the same people who were more important than me before. It's like she hasn't learned a thing from all this. I've stopped replying to her messages because I think I've said all there is to say. I made it clear what the issue was. I gave her chances to fix it, and she's shown me with her actions that she's not interested in or maybe even capable of making the changes we'd need to make it work. Some folks say I handled this wrong, that I should have communicated better from the get-go instead of disappearing to Denver. But I feel like I was clear. I told her exactly what I felt and needed, and she showed me exactly where I stood. Everything that's happened since was just the natural fallout from that conversation. I don't think I'm wrong for not wanting to be someone's backup plan. I don't think I'm wrong for wanting to be with someone who consistently makes our relationship a priority, not just when they're afraid of losing it. And I don't think I'm wrong for believing people when they show me who they really are and what's important to them. So, am I the bad guy for disappearing when my girlfriend made it clear I wasn't her main focus and then breaking up when her behavior didn't change? Update: well, Sarah found out about this post. Not sure how, maybe a friend of hers recognized the story, but she called me super mad yesterday morning, demanding to know why I was airing our dirty laundry online and making her look bad. I told her I didn't use real names and just wanted some outside insights on the situation. She said it didn't matter because anyone who knew us could pinpoint it was about her. Then she accused me of trying to make her look like a bad girlfriend. What's funny is she was more upset about me posting on Reddit than about the actual relationship issues. She spent 20 minutes yelling about how embarrassed she was by people calling her names and saying she was terrible, but didn't spend any time on the real problem. Then she said something that really confirmed I made the right decision. She said, "I can't believe you're letting a bunch of internet strangers convince you to throw away 2 years together." I told her that strangers on the internet didn't convince me of anything. Her own words and actions did. I said that if she was more concerned with how she looked to random people online than how she treated me, that pretty much proved everything I've been saying. She hung up but texted later wanting to meet face to face without an audience. I told her there wasn't anything left to discuss and I was moving on. Then things got weird. She showed up at my place around 8 p.m. with wine and takeout from my favorite spot, saying she wanted to cook and have a nice evening like old times. I told her I appreciated the thought but wasn't okay with her just showing up uninvited, especially after we'd broken up. She started crying, saying she missed me and knew she could fix things if I just gave her another chance. Here's the kicker. While she was standing there crying, her phone was blowing up with notifications. I could see it was her group chat with Marcus and the gang. Even during her big emotional plea, she couldn't ignore the group chat. She kept glancing at her phone and seemed desperate to check the messages. After about 10 minutes, she actually said, "Sorry, I should probably check this. It might be important," and looked at her phone. I just started laughing because it was classic her. She's trying to convince me that I'm her priority while literally prioritizing her phone and friends over our conversation about our relationship. I told her she should go and that this whole scene just reinforced my decision to end things. She got mad, said I was being unfair and looking for reasons to stay broken up. I said I didn't need to look for reasons. She was giving me new ones in real time. She finally left around 9 p.m., but not before telling me I'd regret giving up on someone who loved me as much as she did. I told her if this was her idea of love, then we had very different definitions of it. Since then, she's been sending screenshots of comments from people defending her like that's supposed to change anything. She sent one saying something like, "Everyone deserves to have fun with their friends." She wrote, "See, not everyone thinks I'm terrible." I haven't responded because she's missing the point entirely. No one said she's awful for wanting to hang out with her friends. The problem was her consistently putting everything else above our relationship and then getting upset when I stopped accepting it. Also, I found out from Tyler's girlfriend, Emma, that Sarah's been spreading a completely different version of the story. Emma says Sarah's been telling people I got jealous about her trip, gave her an ultimatum, and when she wouldn't cancel her vacation, I broke up with her out of spite. That's not even close to the truth, but it shows she still doesn't get or won't admit what she actually did wrong. Emma also mentioned that during their Florida trip, Sarah was glued to her phone and seemed distracted, like something at home was bothering her. Emma asked her about it, and Sarah said she was worried I was being weird about the trip. So, Sarah knew I was upset and knew there were issues, but instead of dealing with it, she just hoped it would go away. Then when I stopped accepting being an afterthought, she acted blindsided. I think I'm done with this whole mess. Sarah can spin whatever story makes her feel better, but I know what really went down and I'm good with my decision.